you're uncomfortable with that, if you're there we go. If you're uncomfortable with that, please do feel free to leave the call at this stage. I'll also just show our usual antitrust caution statement. So please just take a moment to read through that and familiarize yourself. If any issues do come up over the duration of the call, please do make us aware. And then also just on some housekeeping. So over the course of the webinar, please do mute your line. It would be great if you could add your organization to your name in Zoom as well. As I mentioned, we're recording the webinar. It will be available through my side platform following the call if you'd like to access the recording. And if you do have any questions throughout the session, please do put these in the chat and we'll pick these up at the end of the session in the Q&A. So just on to today's agenda. So the purpose of the webinar today really is to explore the concept of engagement within the context of the FSA, so farmer engagement within the FSA. We'd like to provide some insights into how current FSA users are working with farmers on sustainability, the role of good engagement within the group, and also cover some strategies for achieving that engagement. And to do this, we're going to hear from current FSA users. So we have Andrew Cochrane at Aloo Sugar Africa and Elena Minzinska at Farm Fritz Poland. And we'll be asking them a few questions so we can learn from their experiences working with farmers on sustainability using the FSA. And then with this key topic of farmer engagement in mind, we're then really happy to share with you and present today a new FSA resource, the FSA Farmer Handbook, which is a guide to the FSA for farmers in farm management groups. Holly King, the designer who worked with us on the handbook, will be joining for this and sharing her expertise and some of the key decisions that were made to really make this a useful and engaging resource for our community. And then finally, we'll have hopefully about 10 minutes at the end for any questions. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Andrew Cochrane, who's Group Head of Grower Agriculture at Aloo Sugar Africa. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on this call.
Hi, Matt. Yeah, such a pleasure to be here and nice to see some familiar faces. Thank you.
I thought, Andrew, that the first place we could start is just by if you could provide us a bit of an overview of Aloo Sugar Africa and how you've been using the FSA.
Yeah, sure. So our journey with the FSA started back in about 2018. We've been using the SAS Farms, which is a local South African sustainability system across all our states in Africa. But the SAS Farms was really developed for South Africa. So we had been looking at a sustainability system that suited, our varying needs across the group. So Aloo Sugar Africa works in 6 African countries. So we're in South Africa, we're in Eswatini, we're in Mozambique, we're in Malawi, Zambia, and Tanzania. So we've got sugar growing operations as well as growers that supply as independent growers that supply us in all of those operations. And really it had been this kind of journey to find a sustainability system that suited our operations as well as our customer needs. And so we went through a process of looking at a whole lot of different sustainability systems. And at the end of the day, we came up with the FSA as the most suitable for our needs. It was a self-assessment, which was similar to what we had experienced with the sus farms. It was also a continuous improvement program, which also we were used to with our sus farms program. And it could service a variety of different scales. So our own operations are quite large. Typically, our estates are about 10 to 15,000 hectares in those countries. And our small scale, well, our growers, then we have large scale, medium scale, and small scale growers. So we classify small scale growers as anything less than 20 hectares. And that's based on the South African statutory definition of a small scale grower. So it's not quite the FSA or the SAR platform definition of a small scale grower, but that's what we use. So yeah, the FSA proved to be flexible, adaptable to all of those requirements that we had, and accepted by all of our customers. So that's really where we got onto using the FSA in our operations.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So just on the differences between the sizes of the farms that you're working with, you mentioned you're covering small, medium, and large farms. Could you speak about some of the differences you've noticed when implementing the FSA in these different contexts, and then potentially if there are also commonalities and similarities there in terms of implementing the FSA for farms of different sizes?
Yeah, so and really, I would still say that we very much in the discovery phase of our journey with the FSA. We in 2022 we did a verification, independent verification of all of our estates as well as our farms in. Our growers that were supplying us in Malawi as well as in Mozambique. So that was the first time we actually had a third-party verification of the self-assessment questionnaire. And we did it as standalone farms. So we took our whole estate as a standalone farm, and we audited it like that. And in Malawi, we've got small-scale growers who are also fair trade accredited. So they're quite well versed in being audited. So they have good documentation systems and governance systems in place. So it was really helpful to start like that. And so we also did standalone verifications for those farms. But as so that was in 2022, we had our verification. We're now coming up to our second verification. So this will be the first time or the second time that we're actually being verified by third parties. And what we've seen is our estates are made up of a number of farms. We have farm managers and we have teams running each individual farm, although they work together as a whole estate. But we've seen the benefit of the farm management groups. So actually on our own estates, what we are setting up is farm management groups. So our whole estate will become a farm management group, and each farm manager then would be accountable for their own farm with their self-assessment and then reporting in with a continuous improvement plan across the whole estate. And that's helped us to align our own governance framework. So we have an agricultural risk governance framework that we've also aligned to the FSA, so that when we go and do the self-assessments, we do our agricultural risk assessment at the same time. And
Sorry,
supply shed
Andrew.
in each mill area.
Sorry,
Have I
Andrew.
lost you?
We lost you for a minute, but you're back now.
Okay, sorry. Let me just put onto my hotspot here because I think this Wi-Fi is a bit weak. You might lose me for a sec as I switch over.
No problem. That's you back now, Andrew.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Although the
Standalone
the
farms.
the video has frozen, Andrew. Okay, so Andrew has, I think, just dropped off. What we can do just now is, unless he's going to be back in the next minute or so, we can just move on to our next speaker and then come back and yeah, continue hearing about Andrew's Ilovo's FSA implementations. But I think now I'm not seeing him on the call. So if it's okay, Elena, I can see you there.
Yeah, it's okay.
If it's okay with you, can we move on and ask you a few questions about your
Good
FSA
afternoon.
implementation?
Thanks for invitation. I'm also having a little difficulties because my video goes off from time to time. So, but I'm here.
No problem, Elena. We can hear you clearly. So if you have to turn your video off. Sorry, I can see Andrew is back. So for the sake of continuity,
Okay.
shall we continue? Apologies, Elena. We'll be with you in the next 10 minutes or so.
My
And
apologies. I've moved closer to the Wi-Fi, so hopefully it's better now.
no problem. This is the nature of online calls. But yeah, thanks, Andrew. So you're explaining about moving towards the FMG implementations.
Correct. Yeah.
A question. So sorry,
Yeah,
please
go ahead.
continue.
Yeah, so I just wanted to explain that with our cane supply, the growers that supply us, as well as our own operations. So we're actually moving into an FMG system where we will bring all our growers per mill site into an FMG, and all of our estates will also be run as FMGs. So each estate can be made up of we have 14 farms in our biggest operation. So those 14 farms will then be part of an FMG. All of them will do self-assessments, and then obviously when we do the verification, then that's selected by the auditor who's going to verify. And then the same with our growers, where it makes sense. And in South Africa, in particular, we had a pre-verification assessment by the auditors with our small scale growers. So grouping our small scale growers together in South Africa, where we've got about 2,000 small scale growers that will be verifying, and running them as an FMG. So the large scale growers will also be part of an FMG, but a separate FMG to our small scale growers.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And I know you've mentioned you're very much I suppose still a discovery phase with doing this and setting up these groups. But I wonder if you could just speak to as you see it now, the role of good engagement within these groups, and what strategies you have in place to help foster such engagement, both in the larger farm context, but also for the smallholders you're working with.
Yeah. So I think certainly on the engagement, it's the internal engagement that needs to happen very clearly and very well, so that everybody within the team knows, what our intentions are and what we're aiming towards. So we've done a number of engagements with both our estate teams as well as the grower teams across the group, so that they understand what the FSA is. They are able to explain it then to their growers. And in that context, it's been really useful with the FSA training that has been developed. So we've put our grower managers onto the FSA training, as well as our farm managers and crop production managers. So that's really helped to develop the understanding around the FSA. And then the next step is to engage with our growers, and those teams then go and engage with the growers and take them through what the FSA is and what we hope to achieve by it.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. And I wonder if and I know at this early stage, but are there any particular challenges you've come across in fostering such engagement? Is there anything that's come up that you've had to manage or overcome?
I think just in terms of sheer numbers of growers that we're dealing with, making sure that everybody's on the same page is not easy, and it requires kind of repeated engagements with growers, as well as making sure your own team is obviously on board and they understand, because they're the front line that's engaging with growers. I think the other issue that we had when we first raised the verification of farms was farmers saying, well, what's in it for them? So that was, I guess it's kind of to be expected, because this is additional work that you're asking your farmers to enter into, and they want to know, is it going to benefit them in any way? So you have to be honest about that. There's no premiums as there are in fair trade. So you have to be clear that there's no premiums involved. If you do this, there's no advantage in better pricing. But there is, of course, greater acceptance with your customers. And growers that go through this also, a lot of the financing companies that or organizations that we've worked with are wanting to see what is your sustainability credentials when they come, when growers are looking for financing. So certainly it is something that comes up, and that's how we've dealt with it.
Thanks, Andrew. What's in it for growers question is so important, and we've tried to structure some guidance on that in the FSA Farmer Handbook as well. I would just finally ask Andrew, if you had one piece of advice to give to early FSA users or prospective FSA users on implementing the system, what would that be? And I know you've covered a lot of useful practical steps already, but if there was anything else you'd like to add, what would that be?
So Matt, I guess what I would say is just go and do it, and learn by doing. Kind of our early steps were, we didn't really know what we were doing. We were open and honest with our growers about that. This is a new system for us, but let's learn together, and let's start doing it and learn as we go along. And I think, you guys have developed some really great materials in training, and this farmer handbook, which is also incredibly useful to hand out to our farmers. So just start doing it, even if it's one step at a time, even if you're just starting off. So for example, on our small scale growers, we didn't set a huge ambition to achieve any performance level. We said, let's just start the journey. Let's just get people on the journey. We're not setting a target to achieve a silver or a gold or even a bronze for that matter. Let's just start the journey together and understand where the gaps are. And I think it's been really useful because, especially in our small scale growers, where governance is often a particular issue with cooperatives or associations that we work with. This is actually giving them tools to be able to manage their own associations or their cooperatives better. And in many of the countries, there's legislation that requires these cooperatives to report to the cooperatives commissioner, and they can use the framework and the templates that we use in the FSA to actually develop their reporting back to the cooperative commissioner. So yeah, just start doing it.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. I think that's very good advice, and is aligned with the purpose of the system, which is to take farmers and groups from where they are and begin them on this journey of continuous improvement. And yeah, very much taking the groups as they are currently and working on sustainability. I would say, Andrew, if it's okay for you to stay on for the rest of the call, we might have some. Hopefully, we're going to have some time for questions at the end, and I'm sure there will be some. So if you're happy to stay on, we'll come back for a Q&A in the last 10 minutes or so.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'd now then just like to introduce our second speaker. So Elena, it's your time now. Thank you very much. So I'll just, Elena is a sustainable agriculture specialist at Farm Frites Poland. Thank you so much for joining us on the call.
Thank you for invitation.
Could you also start, Elena, just by giving us a bit of insight into Farm Frites Poland and why you decided to use the FSA with your growers?
So let me introduce my company in a few words. So I'm working at Farm Frites, which is a joint venture of two big Dutch companies, Farm Frites and Avico. And we are a potato processing company. We are producing French fries, we are producing pancakes and potato flakes. We are buying 380,000 tons of potatoes annually, and we are cooperating with almost 200 farmers, and they are growing for us 10,000 hectares. And the biggest client is McDonald's. We are delivering the French fries to McDonald's restaurants since 1995. We supply 10 European markets with French fries, 10,000 McDonald's restaurants. We also have other clients, but this one is the biggest. And it's very convenient for us have FSA as a verification program, because having those clients in different countries, they know if our farmers achieve gold level or silver level, then the clients know what it exactly means. And many of our clients they are also SAI platform members, so they know how hard it is to get the, for example.
Thanks, Elena. Could you so we'll maybe go to one of the points Andrew raised as well. What's in it for growers? Could you speak to some of the benefits that you've seen for your growers in using the FSA?
We have a few benefits for growers, and one, the most important, is we are paying more for certified potatoes. So we are paying $30 more for 1 ton of certified potatoes. We require FSA assessment in the second year of cooperation. So first year, farmer is getting the bonus $30 per ton anyway, but he needs to start preparing for the FSA assessment in the second year. The second gain for the farmer is also a big one, because we are helping farmers to certify also other crops. If they wish to certify onion, carrots, whatever other crops they buy, they grow, even if we don't buy those crops because we are a potato company, we help them to certify those crops. So, and for example, last week I was at the farms working with the farmers, and I helped them with onion, carrots, parsley, the same amount as potatoes. So, this is a gain for the farmer, and we also help them to arrange the audit. This is always a third-party audit. This is verification by a certification company. We don't participate in the audit. So farmer is on his own, and we also deliver all the checklists, trainings, all the procedures that they can introduce to the farm, to the workers, in order to get assessment.
Thanks, Elena. So could you, on average, how long is it taking to bring in your farmers, then get them to the point where they're going through a FSA verification audit? And I wonder if you could just elaborate a bit more on the training and support you're providing to get them to that point.
The whole process is taking over 1 year. So, because it started with verification. So if the farmer is coming to us that he wants to grow potatoes for us, the first check is very important, because if the farmer, for example, doesn't have enough fields to make a crop rotation, then we are not going to cooperate with him, because the crop rotation is the basic. Without this, he's not able to do sustainable production. If, for example, he doesn't have experience, that's fine. We could teach him. If he doesn't have any equipment, machines, it's also fine. He could take contractors. But having enough land for the potato production or the whole production, it's very important. So the first question is always how much land you have for production, and if you could make the crop rotation. And this is the first thing. Then we, of course, going to the visit. We are going to visit the farm, check the fields, check equipment, check general appearance of the farm and the farmer experience, and then this all of those things, they have a place before even we start cooperation and contract. And then we meet new farmers at the meeting at the region, and we present company and we present all the requirements. There is clear communication, what kind of quality we need and what are the requirements that in 1 year they need to be able to the FSA assessment. And then we are contracting, and after contracts, the true work starts. Farmer is, planting potatoes, and we start initial on-farm assessment done by our employees. And farmer is getting the non-compliance list and the improvement plan, and regular visits from our agronomist and specialist are starting. So we are monitoring the progress. And after this, we have this final on-farm assessment. This is after 12 months of working and training. And on this visit, we also fill the application for certification body for the audit, and we hope for positive results of the audit.
Thanks, Elena. It's really clear, and great to have an overview of the steps that you're going through and working with your growers to get into the point of audit. You mentioned, so I think you're working with 200 growers roughly,
Mhm.
and many of the growers are already, so you've achieved FSA Gold performance
Mhm.
level. I
Yes.
wonder what's next for these farms who have already reached that level, so have reached FSA Gold. Are there practices in particular that you're interested in and looking at to continue to work on sustainability and improve across these farms?
It's worth to say that we started from 7 FSA assessed farmers in 2021, and this year we would have 160 assessed farmers. And of course, we are going with this sustainable agriculture production because it covers a lot of things that our clients like to have verified, like work safety, like workers' rights. But the next step also would be Region Ag program, because we think that we could do more for environment. So we could lower GHG emissions. We could improve the soil quality and soil health. We could work with the biodiversity. So we already work with this FSA, with this Region Ag prototype at the biggest farm. So we want to be ready for assessment according to this Region Ag program.
Great, thanks, Elena. I then just asked the same question I asked Andrew on advice you'd have. So again, you've covered a lot of the practical steps you're going through and working with your growers and implementing the FSA, and getting them to the point of going through verification audits. Is there anything that stands out in using the system and implementing it that you would recommend for for other users to really use it successfully and help drive this positive change on farm?
Clear communication is important. As I said on the beginning, we also communicate for our farmers why we need this assessment, why this is important for us and for our clients. And then training, and then, like Andrew said, doing it. This is important. Just start doing, and don't. Of course, we joke that we are going for gold, that we need, gold level, but in fact, if farmer just wants to start and even get bronze, it's also a big achievement. So, but I need to say that 88% of our farmers is on the gold level, so they are truly going for gold. But as Andrew said, just start doing it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Elena. And
Thank
yes, it's a fantastic achievement to have so many growers at that level. But as you're saying, equally, it's different for different groups in different farming contexts. If it's okay, we'll again, Elena, if you're happy to stay on, we'll come back for some questions at the end, if that's all right. Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much to both Andrew and Elena. It's really so valuable for us to hear your experiences and for you to share these with us. I think now, having highlighted the importance of good engagement and what's required when implementing the FSA and how important that is when working on sustainability projects. I'd now like to turn to the FSA Farmer Handbook. And in doing so, I'm joined by Holly King, who's the designer that helped us shape this resource and really bring it to life. So Holly, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure. It's lovely to be here, Matt.
So maybe I can start just by giving a bit more context to the handbook. So this is a new resource for FSA users. It's aimed at farmers in farm management groups, and it's a guide to the FSA for them. So it contains key information they need about the FSA, and is really designed to facilitate engagement within the group of the kind we've just been discussing. And our motivation for creating this resource came from a recognised need from our members. So we have guidance materials aimed at the farm management group coordinator level. But what about a resource directly for farmers in farm management groups that covers the key aspects of the FSA system? And so we consulted with our members using the FSA during the development of the handbook, and really to understand what was important to include and how we can integrate some of the most frequently asked questions by farmers throughout the guide. And we also had to closely consider the format of the resource and how it could be made practically useful to our community, given the many varying contexts in which the FSA is used, with verifications now in over 60 countries and for approaching now 200 different crops. And so two key principles we had in mind when developing the handbook were flexibility and accessibility. So we wanted to create this resource that could be adapted to FSA users' needs, either as a digital or physical resource, but also one that's globally accessible and can be translated into different languages. So Holly, with that in mind, could you tell us about some of the design decisions that were made during the development of the handbook with these key principles of flexibility and accessibility in mind?
Of course. Matt, it was quite a challenge, as you will remember, to find a format that would work for digital and physical. And we really wanted to make sure that, given tech literacy across the world, this would be something that was as simple as possible for as many farmers and coordinators to use and be able to edit and then export either for a printed resource or a digital resource that they could distribute on a newsletter, for example. So as you'll see through this quick overview of the booklet, we decided to format this as a A4 landscape booklet per page, which then could be put side by side, but also be used in a presentation format as 16 by 9. And so that eliminated the need for two different resources for both physical and digital. And then secondly, we wanted to make sure that we had guidelines for each of the users to be able to edit, translate, and then export the content in the format that they needed. And we wanted a guide that would be simple enough for everyone to understand, but also not too complicated and needless that it became confusing. So we used images as the backgrounds for many of the pages that were locked and were not editable, but it was just the text so that nothing could shift and slide and have the opportunity to potentially be dislodged in the correct format. And then we had to explain how to export for digital or versus a printer, with specifications on the different printers that might be accessible, everything from professional printing through to someone's printer in an office, and trying to make sure that it was really accessible for everyone. The other thing with print considerations was things such as the number of pages in the booklet needs to be a multiple of 4 in order to be printable. And I'm sure that many people would not be aware of something like that when wanting to add in pages, if, for example, there was not enough space when the book was translated. And so we had to think quite carefully about what we needed to explain to the users to make this as simple as it could be. We also really wanted to make sure the text was versatile and had enough space for the translations, because when text is translated into French from English, for example, the French translation can be up to 15% longer in the physical text. And so the containers and the design needed to house that and ensure that if there was a translation, it would be able to fit without messing up the entire design. And we really wanted to make this an interesting and engaging resource that was not just standard text boxes, but it needed to be accessible. So a format and a design like this, we tried very hard to make it visual, to bring in characters and illustration, and to try and showcase also the landscapes that they are familiar with in farming, and use different formats to make that really interesting and creative.
Thanks, Holly. It's yeah, I mean we're delighted with the design, and as you say, it's very visual. It's the first time we've used illustrations like this in an FSA resource. Could you explain a bit about how you go about designing a resource like this that clearly is unique, as you say, retains its own character, but is also in keeping with our FSA materials, our style and branding?
Of course, this was a really fun challenge because the FSA has a very established and professional brand, but it is very sleek and corporate and very clean in the lines that are used. And for this handbook, we wanted to bring in texture and illustration to make it feel more tangible for farmers who are really in touch with a more tactile side of this. And so we really wanted to emphasize that texture. So you can see subtly throughout the handbook, we've tried to bring in some slight background texture, which you might be able to notice very subtly, as well as illustrations that have a slightly less corporate style to them, have more rough edges and are not as vectorized. But with that, we still needed to make sure that it didn't move too far away from the core FSA brand. And so what we did to balance that out was limit our colors to containing a lot of the FSA core brand colors, making sure that those were consistent throughout, as well as keeping the font exactly the same as it is for the FSA branding.
Thanks, Holly. That's really really clear and interesting to hear. Yeah, all the reviewing the decisions we had to make when creating this resource and the thought that you've put into it. I'd now just want to ask, so one of the key other principles we wanted to incorporate into this handbook is representation, and make sure that the handbook's representative of the diverse range of farming systems and crops for which the FSA is used. Could you speak a bit about the how that was achieved throughout the handbook?
Of course, this was really key, Matt, and we tried very hard to represent a number of diverse aspects in this book, everything from the people and representing different groups from around the world, and through to things like landscapes and making sure that different geographical areas and farming techniques were shown throughout the handbook so that farmers could see their area or themselves represented in this book in some way. So, for example, we wanted to include a variety of landscapes that all have a particular connotation with the farming that might be in that particular area. We tried not to be too stereotypical about this and wanted to allow interpretation for what an area like this could be. But for example, a landscape like this could be very European, whereas that is contrasted with a scene like this, which could potentially be more African in the topography and the nature. This is another example of a landscape that could be somewhere from North America, as another example. And so this was something we really tried to consider and wanted to showcase throughout. We also wanted to show some farming techniques that were perhaps slightly less represented in other traditional farmer manuals and handbooks. And so this was a scene that we created, which is cranberry farming. And we wanted to use something like this, which is not as well recognized, but still represents one of the different diverse techniques that is used around the world and the farmers that can be a part of the FSA. We also wanted to show a little bit of this technique of the rice paddies. So here is another example of a very different scene and different farmers and farms that could belong to the FSA. And lastly, this one with this field, and something we showed in this example was also having these margins around the edges of the fields to try and encourage the growth of fauna and flora outside of the crop, and to have that represented as a very holistic representation of farming and different farming practices.
Thanks, Holly. I'll also just say, so we've got case studies throughout the handbook as well. So we wanted to include a range of different FSA implementations from farmers of growing different crops. So we've got an example of sugarcane in Malawi. We have almonds in Portugal, and also barley in the UK. And the idea was to provide accounts from farmers of successful FSA implementation, some key insights and learnings for them in going through that process, that would be meaningful for the farmers using this handbook. So Holly, thank you so much for talking us through that and explaining these sort of key decisions that were made in the development. I'd just ask if there's anything else you wanted to share in the handbook just now? Anything we've not covered?
No, I do see a couple of questions in the chat, which I'm not sure if you'd like to answer now or after this.
Great. We can come to those. Thank you, Holly. Yes, we will. I'll pick these up. Perfect. Well, thanks so much. So the FSA, yes, I see one of the questions in the chat actually is on is the handbook already available? The answer to that is yes. It's on, you can access it through MySci platform or through our resource center. You can scan that QR code, which will take you to the resource center, or just access that through our website. And the handbook, along with the guidance for printing and exporting the resource is available within a folder to download. So yeah, a huge thanks again, Holly. I think now we still have just about 10 minutes for any other questions. So I will just have a look at the chat. Thanks, Kira.
We have one question, which I think is directed more towards Andrew, and it's: what are the critical areas to focus on when implementing the FSA with smallholder farmers rather than large-scale farmers?
Hi, Andrew.
Just make sure I'm off mute. Yeah, I did put an answer in the chat there, but particularly with small scale growers, you know, supporting the cooperatives and associations that they are normally associated with, especially around the governance aspects. An example is in Tanzania, we have more than 9,000 small scale growers in 17 different associations, and we actually have a social facilitator recruited as or part of the grower extension team that helps with the governance aspects in the cooperative. So I think on the small scale growers, that's really focusing on those FMG activities. Whereas with our large scale growers, we try to share lessons learned on our own estates, especially with regard to our own farming systems, as well as, for example, templates, standard operating procedure type templates that we use on our own estates that would be useful for our growers, and create that documentary evidence for them for practices that they might be doing.
Thanks, Andrew. I'd just point out as well, so in the FSA materials, within the self-assessment questionnaire itself, our materials, there is separate guidance for smallholders, acknowledging that the context is different and sometimes the requirements when looking at the different audit checkpoints and FSA questions, the requirements can be different in these contexts. So we have some guidance on that as well. If you would like a specific pointer, please just do drop us an email and we can provide this information following the call.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Matt. And a good example there would be, for example, a land use plan, where an individual small-scale farmer on 0.5 of a hectare won't have a particular land use plan, but at a landscape level, you can support the association within an area with a land use plan.
Great, yeah, great example. Thanks, Andrew.
And Matt, we have a couple of questions around costs. And I know Andrew's already answered one of them from the Aloo perspective, but maybe we can hear from Elena also. So the question is, Elena said that they're giving support to growers to be audited by an external certification body, but are they assuming the cost of this audit, or is it assumed by the grower?
The cost of support is zero for the farmer, because it's also our business to have assessment. But for the certificate belongs to the farmer. So he could also certify other crops. We are not acting as a farm management group. Those are individual farmers and they own certificates, so they paid for certification.
Perfect, thanks, Elena. Another question we have for you, Matt. Will you be offering the handbook in other languages, such as French?
So at the moment, the handbook is only available in English, but as Holly was presenting, the text within the resource is editable. So you can take those, all of the texts are just in PowerPoint boxes that you can edit and add your own translations, and that's absolutely okay for you to do if you would like to translate the resource into different languages yourself. Saying that, if there's particular needs for certain languages, please do let us know, and translation is something we can look at ourselves, as we have done for other existing FSA guidance materials. But if you would like to just do that yourself, it's in a format that will allow you to do that quite straightforwardly.
Perfect, thanks, Matt. And another question was, what is the possibility to customize this handbook regionally and put some local context?
So what I would say is, we have the as I was saying, so the text boxes can be edited, and there's obviously scope in each page to review the text there and edit that. The diagrams are fixed and the illustrations are fixed, so you're limited in terms of the space you would have to add additional material. But certainly the format it's in, if there is regional context you'd like to add, that's also possible.
Perfect, thanks, Matt. That's all the questions from the chat. I did also get a question about if we'd be sharing the recording. So just to let everybody know, we will share the recording and a link to where the Farmer's Handbook is available following the webinar.
Perfect, thanks so much, Kira. amazingly, we're almost bang on time as well. So I would just say a huge thank you again, Andrew, Elena, and Holly for joining and sharing your expertise with us on the call. Thank you everybody for joining and participating in the webinar. I hope you found it useful. If you do have any questions following the call on the FSA or on the handbook, please do just get in touch with us via email, and we'll be really happy to take any queries further. But yeah, I would just say thank you again, and I hope everybody has a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Holly.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.